Alright, what's going on, guys? I hope everyone's doing well. Welcome everybody back to another video on the channel, and today's going to be a little bit more of a complicated topic for PUBG, and this is going to be crossplay across every single platform. Yes, that includes mobile, console, and PC. Now, while that might sound pretty ridiculous at first, there's a little more substance to this whole thing than you might think, and we've got to talk about this now because the probability of this happening, while it is a little bit down the road, it is certainly within the cards now. So let's talk about this pretty complicated topic and see where it goes. If you guys do enjoy the video today, though, I would really appreciate if you could leave a thumbs up. It is absolutely free, and also, if you're new to the channel, make sure to go ahead and subscribe, as we're getting pretty close to 300,000. I want to thank you all for supporting the channel recently through these very strange times. Now, if you haven't been keeping up with PUBG recently and what's going on within the realm of this game, PUBG added bots to console, and this was in order to improve not only the AI of these bots and give them a nice testing ground, but also probably further implement these into PC and then every other platform and then upgrade them as well. Now, PUBG Mobile was actually the first platform to receive bots, and they've been in the game for quite a long time, although they are very primitive as well. Now, the reason bots on console are such an important topic is because this is making way for what is essentially the new ranked mode, or what will effectively be just regular public matches now. And the regular, like, casual mode, I suppose, is going to be good to foster to new players and I guess potentially people who don't want to play super sweaty all of the time. And I'm telling you this, it's important because it looks like they're trying to get every single iteration of PUBG on the same page. In fact, in a previous update, they mentioned how they're trying to close the gap between PC and console content, because usually console gets stuff about a week after PC does, and they're trying to shorten that as much as possible. They want every iteration of their game to pretty much be on the same page at all times, which is like a reasonable proposition, I think, for PUBG. And as many of you guys know, PUBG already has some crossplay functionality between Xbox and PlayStation that was established around a year ago at this point, I believe, and I'd say it's worked out fairly well so far. I don't play on console a ton, but I don't really see it being an issue for most players, and as far as I'm concerned, it's a positive thing. You can play with your buddies that potentially might be on a different system. So with that in mind, we essentially have three mainstream groups of players for PUBG. We have people that play on mobile, we have console players, both PlayStation and Xbox, and then we have PC players. But amongst all of these three groups, they can never really intertwine. There's no crossplay functionality between all of these yet, because the games can behave and perform somewhat different depending on what you're playing on, but it looks like crossplay between these is not only possible, but may happen. Now, Brian Corrigan, who works at PUBG, mentioned over on Twitter that crossplay between console and mobile is possible, yet it would take a really meticulous balancing act to actually make that viable. And the games themselves behave somewhat differently depending on what you're playing. So, for example, the recoil per gun on mobile versus PC is entirely different. PC has way harder to control recoil, but because it's easier to control that with a mouse than it is with your fingers, right? So generally it's compensated for on other platforms. On console, recoil on guns isn't nearly as bad as it is on PC because, again, you have to be able to control that with a stick, so they dumb it down a little bit. So as you can see, one of the major issues already is how would you balance between having like mobile players with very little recoil being able to just blast PC players from across the map who, you know, have to deal with higher recoil, of course, but can control it with the mouse. You have to really ride a fine line there. Another issue is performance across all of these platforms. Console is capped at 30 frames per second, although technically it is possible for them to run, I guess, a 60 FPS game. The problem is if they uncap the frame rate, there's a lot of like fluctuation, so there may be instances where you have like really good FPS, and then potentially if you get into a really demanding fight, you could drop down to, you know, extremely low 10 to 20 FPS, which is just not, it's not viable. Something else I forgot to mention as well is Google Stadia just came out with PUBG that you can play on that platform as well, and I don't know how the matchmaking in particular works in there. I believe you only play with other Stadia players, but it's not technically downloaded onto your device or on your platform, and instead you're pretty much playing it through a cloud, so there would be tons of issues with that, trying to get crossplay resolved with that as well. But it seems like that's the direction they're wanting to take, and it would make sense if they're developing these AI bots to be consistent across all of the platforms, regardless of what you're playing on, just to have sort of one cohesive PUBG experience. And speaking of the bots, for those of you who have never played with them, there's essentially two versions of bots in PUBG now. There's like really dumbed down bots that are just pretty much free kills, and then there's also bots called like Ultrons, and they're like completely cracked. PUBG has mentioned over on Reddit that the really dumb bots are just going to be for noob players and then people who are just starting out in the game. And then the Ultron bots are going to be for just casual players and then people who are queuing up in that non-competitive playlist. Now, I'm not sure how many people actually use Google Stadia to play PUBG. From my understanding, it doesn't seem to be the most popular way to play the game. And they probably were mandated to create bots specifically for that platform. And that's why we're seeing it on others as well, just to, so they can actually fill up lobbies in that particular platform. But regardless, if crossplay is going to be viable across all of these different ways to play the game, then they need to be consistent and on the same page. And getting Stadia there along with everything else is going to be a little bit of a challenge. And assuming they got everything out of the way, they were able to overcome all of these roadblocks and hurdles to get crossplay between all of these things that they want. The big question here is, would it even be fair? I feel like this is the most pressing issue. Assuming it's even technically possible, would it be fair to every player, regardless of the platform you're playing on, assuming they were just mixed lobbies? I'm not so sure. Now, for the sake of this discussion, let's frame this in the way where the PUBG devs said it was viable between mobile and console right now, as it is always an option, technically. If PUBG was able to get console to a point where it could run at 60 FPS consistently, I actually think this would be the most fair way to do crossplay, and it might have more success than you think. I understand the way PUBG is built is it's very difficult to get consistent performance in this game because of just how complex it is, but like, we're in the year 2020, we're playing on next-gen consoles, if you're playing on console as well, and some games have been running at 60 FPS since like 2011, you know what I'm saying? And we're literally almost a decade out, and PUBG still isn't at 60 FPS on console, which I just don't understand. I also find it pretty strange that it seems like if they were going to do a new crossplay, technically speaking, it would be between mobile and console, whereas you would think the easier jump to make would be between console and PC, as the games are way more consistent throughout their mechanics and everything, and even some of their hardware. Another problem to consider is exactly what's happening with Warzone right now, which does have complete crossplay between all the platforms. Many console players are getting frustrated, playing against not only mouse and keyboard users, but also just the influx of cheaters that PC has. If you put that up against console lobbies, then they just simply don't stand a chance, and they'll become frustrated very quickly. And so, of course, we know how bad cheating is a problem in PUBG. If you were to, I guess, infest that into console, bringing that pretty big problem over to a platform that doesn't really have that much incidence of that, at least compared to PC, then that could present an entire issue in and of itself. So this means we're kind of in a conundrum here. We can technically reasonably expect crossplay between mobile and console at some point, but the question is, can they get console to a point where it's running well enough for that to even be viable? And if that's the case, even if that is established, are they going to leave out PC out of this crossplay and just sort of leave it as its own player base? That has advantages and it has its disadvantages. All in all, it's going to be a little too early to tell what's going on with this whole situation until we get the lobby overhaul, which is going to be coming pretty soon. So apparently PUBG is going to be overhauling the entire lobby menu system to make it more cohesive across every single one. And then, of course, implementing that competitive ranked mode as well as the new casual mode that will probably have bots in it. So that's a lot of the facts just laid out in front of us. Now, I want to talk a little bit my opinion on whether I think crossplay even should be something that's considered. I think at the end of the day, the most important thing to recognize is that there are a lot of issues taking place that maybe should be prioritized over crossplay at the minute. The biggest issue at the forefront in my eyes is getting all of these different platforms to be on the same page in terms of performance, right? Of course, console is never going to be at the same like real top max performance as most PCs are, but we could get to a point where they're at least fair. 60 FPS on console would go a long way, as well as figuring out how you would balance between having like mobile and console players playing together, and that's an entirely different can of worms I'm not going to open in this video. However, if they do manage to do that and it's successful, then we could start considering opening that up crossplay to PC as well, and then eventually having just Battlegrounds as one entire cohesive narrative. There's a lot of new changes to the game coming within like the next couple of months that are going to pave the way for probably the rest of the year of content going forward, and we should be getting some type of roadmap that's really going to lay out what we're going to be getting through the rest of 2020 soon as well. I'm going to keep you guys completely updated on this string and see whatever happens with this, and let me know in the comment section Do you personally think crossplay between all these platforms is a good idea? And also, do you think that it should stay just between mobile and console if that is going to be enabled, or should PC be included in this entire thing? It's a pretty interesting discussion, and I would love to know what you guys think down below. And also, those of you play on Google Stadia, let me know what you think about it down below. I'm thinking about doing a video on it. It kind of just came out of nowhere, and I'm not sure what the consensus is on it yet, so I'm gonna have to check it out as well. But anyways, if you guys did end up enjoying today's video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you are brand new, and if you haven't done already, if you want to go follow me over on Twitch, the link to that will be down below in the description. I'd really appreciate if you drop a follow. But I want to thank you guys so much for watching again. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next stream or the next video. Take it easy, and peace out.